Hello, welcome to another episode, the final episode of 2021, Scuttlebutt, a Marine Corps Association podcast. I'm Nick. I'm here with Vic.
Hello.
Will.
Howdy.
And Nancy is joining us here today.
Hi, everyone.
And we have a great episode today with then Major, now Lieutenant Colonel Adam Yang. Vic, you want to give us an update on?
Yeah, so Lieutenant Colonel Adam Yang was getting his graduate degree at American University, as you hear about in the interview. But since we recorded the interview, he has since been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel. He's now working at PP&O at the Pentagon. And he's also still plugged in with the Marine Corps University, working with them through the Barrow Fellowship, and still working on his graphic novel, Destination Unknown. So very busy guy, doing a lot of things, and is very invested in what the Marine Corps is doing, where we're going, and also storytelling and making sure that Marines' voices are being heard and that no story is left as or is perceived as being insignificant. So.
And Destination Unknown we have available on the Marine Corps Association app and within the professional development resources of the Marine Corps Association webpage. Hit on ProDev, go to multimedia resources, graphic novels, there it is. So check that out.
And William, what do you think about it? Have you had a chance to check out Destination Unknown? What do you think?
I looked a little. I do like the concept because some of my favorite Gazette articles that we see are the ones that they make their argument via hypothetical future stories and situations, and that it's a good way to get readers' attention and a great way to start discussion by presenting these future hypotheticals. And also, I think you mentioned earlier, Nick, that Destination Unknown is also the artists are also Marines as well.
Everything in there is by Marines. Yep.
Which I love the idea of Marines helping Marines and finding ways to better the Corps by using like their skills and knowledge aside from what you traditionally think of. So like our artists, writers, storytellers are all can all be influential factors in helping improve the Marine Corps as a whole.
Yep. And but this is the last episode of 2021, so let's take a quick look ahead at 2022. We got some great stuff coming up, including in February, we are putting together our first coordinated special series of chaplains. And to help us introduce that, we've got Nancy here today. Nancy?
Yeah, so for the month of February, Vic has put together some great interviews to mark the 78th anniversary of Four Chaplains Day. And the four chaplains were 4 Army chaplains from 4 different denominations who were on a troop transport ship in 1943 going through submarine U-boat-infested waters. The ship, the Dorchester, was torpedoed, and as the ship was sinking, the 4 chaplains on board helped to calm the men amidst the chaos and urged them into lifeboats. They even gave their life jackets to those men who were without. The chaplains remained on board the ship as it went down. And Vic, you've already heard some great stories from chaplains, and I know we're looking forward to hearing that series all throughout the month of February.
Yeah. It's still coming together. It's almost completed now. But yeah, we've had some wonderful guests. The director of Marine Chaplain Curriculum at local seminary, the 16th chaplain of the Marine Corps was honored us with his presence, and the executive director of the Four Chaplains Foundation also joined us. So yeah, like you said, four chaplains for Four Chaplains Day. 4 weeks of talking about chaplains and sort of diving into a, I think, underappreciated and often taken for granted position within the Commander Special Staff. So, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it. I really learned a lot and really enjoyed being a part of the series. So.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing all of those.
Yeah, we are excited about that. We are also launching a new email address.
Yay!
So we can contact everybody with official Scuttlebutt email, which is not the MCA like mainline email, just kind of branching out, just kind of making ourselves
A direct line to
A direct
Scuttlebutt.
line.
Yeah, we keep telling everyone,
Yeah.
if you want to participate, submit an article. Well, why not? Why
Yeah.
not make it just easy? Just
So-
shoot us an email, yeah.
So that is scuttlebutt@mca-marines.org, and that will be monitored by all three of us. And,
And I will, and a little carrot to dangle out there is if we get enough responses and we get enough people wanting to engage with our episodes, I mean, we might do like a Q&A or
Do a mail call episode.
a mail call
Oh, yeah.
episode.
Yep.
We'll do mail call, and we'll, and also too, like, feel free to submit voice recordings too onto that, and we can even play those recordings on air as you ask your questions, and so we'll get some engagement here, as we work towards potentially even doing maybe a live stream later on in 2022. But this will be a first go around, and then if you got questions, concerns, please hit us up, and then maybe get you on air, and we'll do our best to answer whatever question you may have.
and we're
At
looking,
least respond.
yeah, and we're looking at also, William and I have been looking into possibly starting our own Reddit board, which would be a great place to track what episodes are out there and what content we're plugging with the episodes.
And
Just in case you're driving when you listen, and then you're like, well, I don't want to go back and look at the show notes to find the link to the whatever.
Yeah.
You can just jump on the Reddit, and boom, there it all is. So,
work in progress. We'll leave more information as it comes. It'll be a place for polite, wonderful, scholarly discussion, intellectualism.
Intellectual curiosity,
Intellectual
as we will
curiosity.
talk more about with Andy
Sounds
Milburn
good.
next
well, the only
year.
people who are going to know about it are the people who listen to the podcast, ergo, the good ones.
Yes, yes. The chosen few.
The chosen few.
So and then if you have any other suggestions on how we maybe can expand our reach, use the email address.
All right. So we're going to also lightly talk to some of our showbiz friends in January to kind of get the tension out there during award season and hopefully get some
We've got
coverage.
actor extraordinaire Jeff Stoltz, and we have documentarian Stephen Canty, former Marine.
So looking forward to that. And then we've got bigger plans going down the road, and we'll reveal more as it comes up. But thanks for a great 2021. We're moving into 2022. Take it away past Vic and Nick with the interview with then Major Yang.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. So this is Vic, and I'm also again here with Nick, the Nick and Vic show. We are also honored to have Jaci here, our intern. Say hello. Oh, you're muted? Hello. There we go. Heyo. And we have our esteemed guest. We're very honored to have Major Adam Yang here, who is working through Marine Corps University, is a PhD student, is an overall hard charger, and is the creator of the graphic novel series Destination Unknown. So welcome. Thanks, man.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, you're the man. Appreciate you taking the time to be here. So we know each other because our kids went to kindergarten
That's right.
together, and so we'll spend most of the day talking about the education system.
That's right. Fairfax County.
No, man, we ain't got time. We ain't got time for that. We won't be talking about that. But what we will be talking about is education. But if you could, because you've got a pretty cool backstory, if you mind filling in our listeners on sort of who you are, how you came up, feel free to take as little or as much time as you want. But I think the fact that you're a Mustanger is going to be really intriguing and provocative for our listeners.
Right, so I went to grew up in New York City, and I went to a pretty good high school called Brooklyn Technical High School. But I didn't have very good grades, and I don't know, I wasn't very school inclined.
Is that where
back
Miles
then.
Morales went in Spider-Verse?
It was near it. He went to Midwood, I think.
Okay.
Oh no, actually went to a private school near Midwood. If I had to
Nice.
guess, but I thought about it.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that was, joining the Marines, and he kind of, he gave me the spiel that his recruiter gave him. I was one of his, if you bring in two, you get promoted kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was one of the twos, and he brought me into RS Flatbush in Brooklyn back in 1997, and I sort of like the idea of adventure, maybe some college money. But I was just planning on going to like a New York State college, but I didn't really have many ambitions at the time. I didn't really know what I was doing. But I sort of was attracted to sort of the big idea of the Marine Corps. I know talking to you, you probably understand
Oh yeah.
what that means. And at the end when I was going through this booklet, my recruiter's like, "Oh, that's the Naval Academy." I was like, "Oh, what's that?" He's like, "Oh, you go there and become an officer." And he's like, "If you want to do that, there's a way to do that through the Marine Corps." And while enlisting, and I never really thought about applying. I definitely didn't have the grades or anything like that to apply just straight outright. So that was always in the back of my head. I enlisted as a radar tech, 5942, for the big flat green radar system, and I was stationed out in Yuma, Arizona.
Nice.
And at that time, the Naval Academy used to send out recruiters out to 29 Palms and Yuma and different places where the PME schools were, or the MOS schools were,
Right,
because that's
right.
where your young enlisted were.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to try to pick us off to go apply for the Naval Academy. And when they came out to, I think, first 29 Palms, when I went to MOS school, I was like, oh, yeah, I wanted to go there. I was like, oh. And I had a gunnery sergeant that really encouraged me to go do it. And I applied and got pulled into the NAPS, the prep school in Newport, Rhode Island. And then I went to the Naval Academy in 2001. Graduated in 2005 and became a communications officer. So that was a very condensed story, but I had a kernel of an idea back as a teenager, and I followed through on it, but it was sort of by accident, and
Yeah.
here I am.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Yeah, it's interesting how those sort of like seeds get planted, and then you're like, oh yeah,
Oh,
dude, I totally remember that.
Oh, yeah, that looked cool.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Marine Corps marketing system is awesome and it's very intentionally awesome. But yeah, I remember same thing, as a kid, just like looking at the posters, the Super Bowl ads and stuff, and just like, huh. And then something came up like, wait a minute.
Right.
So yeah, that's really cool. How has being prior enlisted sort of shaped your career path? Like, I know that there's a certain, I don't want to say stigma, but there's definitely a precedent, I think, that's set, especially for enlisted guys, when they see that their CO or their OIC was prior enlisted. There's a certain level of expectation, right? Do you agree with that, or?
I do. I think that helps once you get out to your platoon or your detachment or whatever it is, and the Marines know you're prior enlisted. There's a different level of there's a connection that's definitely there because you can relate on that level. Like, hey, Lance Corporal Yang thought the same thing, and you can sort of speak to them that level. In terms of actual performance, and there are a lot of people talk about this, but I think all that sort of washes away. The Marine Corps does a really good job, regardless if you come from ROTC, PLC, Naval Academy. By the time you get out of TBS, you don't really notice where people are commissioned from, even Naval Academy people, and you're all sort of really on equal footing. So I think the Marine Corps does a good job there. But in terms of the, being prior enlisted, there's a personal connection with the enlisted that's different.
Probably give you a little bit of more, I don't want to say like authority. I think authority is like you said, I think Marine Corps does a good job of establishing it. But at the same time, I think there's a level of authenticity. So when you say like, hey, don't go out and act like a knucklehead this weekend, they're like, oh yeah, because he used to go out on the weekend.
I was that knucklehead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was that absolute knucklehead.
So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And then what about then? Because you talked about Naval Academy. And that seed bed. Is there anything sort of as you were a young enlisted person that the professional development aspect, like were there mentors or gunnery sergeants, staff sergeants maybe, who were just like, dude, you've got something. You mentioned the gunnery. That was like,
the
hey.
gunny.
So speak a little bit about that mentorship piece and the professional development at the young enlisted age.
So there's a So when I was enlisted, there was a gunnery sergeant and a warrant officer. It really helped me with my application and things like that. And I guess they were very supportive. The people who were not supportive were people who maybe other lance corporals who wanted to apply also, but I don't know why. For whatever, if they had a child or something like that, you're not eligible for the Naval Academy. But they were very encouraging in terms of applying, just going for it. And once they found out that I was trying to apply for the Naval Academy, they knew Naval Academy graduates, and they came and talked to me and helped me, write an essay or help me link up with some people and figure things out. But I thought that was very encouraging. And then, similarly, when I became an officer, if I knew of any of my enlisted or anyone around me who were similarly trying to do something, if I could help out, I always wanted to help out. Maybe that's part of the Marine Corps familial aspect of being a Marine.
So would you say that that's institutional, or would you say that's more personal, or is that a perfect blending of the two?
Right. I want to say, I'll be very optimistic. I want to say it's institutional.
Yeah.
We try to teach, taking care of Marines, officers eat last, that kind of mentality. And I think that's pervasive in our whole culture. Even in boot camp, you help out your rack mate and you help out these other people. So when you walk up that idea all the way up, it also shows up when you apply for the Naval Academy, and it also shows up on the battlefield also. So I think I want to say it's institutional.
And then, so what about other programs such as like MECEP or ECP, MCP? Are those as institutionally, I guess, encouraged, or is that more the individual Marine has to take the initiative?
So it's a little bit encouraged. So I speak to this because I was the education officer in my first unit,
Nice.
7th Engineer Support Battalion, and all the MECEP and officer ascension programs used to come to me, and either Marines would reach out to me directly, or every once in a while someone, another lieutenant or warrant officer said, "Hey, I got someone who's interested. Let's help them out." And I would reach out and say, "Hey, let's start pulling them in." And I didn't know anybody. I thought I was just trying to help people, but institutionally, there was no pressure to do it. I think I just wanted to do it because their warrant officer wants this sergeant or corporal to, be an officer.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so then, how was that then, being at the Naval Academy, where, truth be told, you're taking from a pretty selective population. Like, there's a lot of wickets that maybe some of the people on the more less represented demographic don't necessarily know of or have the opportunity. So you're pulling from a pretty select cadre of society initially. Right. You come in as a prior enlisted. What was that? Was there a culture shock there? How did your fellow midshipmen view you? Were they looking to you as, hey, this is Big Brother now, or?
Right. So there's a little bit of that looking to the prior enlisted, and that happened at NAPS and also at the academy. And NAPS is the preparatory school in Newport, Rhode Island, for about 9 months before you go to the academy, because they don't want you to academically fail out of the system.
Right. Get you ready. Yeah.
So there's definitely that little bit of Big Brother aspect of learning the culture and what to do, and marching in uniforms, and just kind of military sort of that sort of behavior and attitude. They look to you for that. But being the Naval Academy, I think as a prior enlisted, you get humbled really quick. You're not going to be the top of your class immediately. Because the academies, at least in my experience, they recruit from the cream of these applicants.
Right.
And they're excellent athletes and smart people. So, and that can go two ways for the prior enlisted going into the system. Like, you're either going to just fall, you're either going to keep this weird chip on your shoulder, thinking that you're better than the midshipmen or cadets around you,
right?
Or you just kind of embrace it and be like, hey, I'm with some great people around me, and I can work with this and use that to lift me up and get involved and do my best,
right?
Or you kind of have this weird chip on your shoulder, and I've seen both things happen, but it can work out very positively or poorly for that enlisted going through the academy.
Yeah. I think that's just good life advice, really.
Right.
Like, sort of take a step back no matter where you are.
Right.
Cool. So then how then did all of these really nuanced experiences then help you with the creation of your graphic novel?
So if I were to really dig deep internally, so the point of the novel is to get young officers and young enlisted interested about ideas of security and strategy. And I don't know if you were prior enlisted, Vic, or not.
No, just a knucklehead. Yeah,
right, but a knucklehead lieutenant. Did you really understand your strategic environment? I don't know, out of TBS, or what was really going on. Maybe you would have out of going to college beforehand. But I think back to being a lance corporal. It's I didn't understand the idea of duty, loyalty, service, ethos, and even security and strategy. Those are just really big ideas I never thought about. And, with the graphic level like this, the idea is that maybe you can start nourishing those ideas really early on. And, you don't know what you're going to get at the end of it, but that's the idea of the graphic novel. Because I look back to myself and, people who go through the system, you have no idea what's going on. You're just a Lance Corporal PFC going through whatever you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, Second Lieutenant Ruble was like, and this is Clinton era, when I came in. So, I mean, it was like, is you're either a MU or you're a non-player, at the strategic level.
Sure.
And so, yeah, everybody was just sort of getting ready, but it was just this horse race to try to get the MU.
Right.
Or maybe you get a UDP, you sit on the rock, maybe do a couple cool things here and there. But, yeah, the MU was the Golden Boys.
Right.
And, so there wasn't a lot of, like
why you're doing this.
Right, yeah, there was no, engagement really with, the strategic world. Because it's like, well, if I'm not going on a MU, I don't really need to follow current events.
Right. And that's a big criticism in our whole PMU system. You don't really start thinking of that larger operational strategy level till you're a major and you go to command and staff. Even EWS, that's still a very tactical, functional level school, right? Focus on amphibious warfare. But I'm sure it touches on the bigger ideas of maybe a strategy, so maybe IR theory. But you don't get that till you're a major, at least a mid-level officer, 10, 11 years in.
Yeah.
And that's when they start opening your mind towards these bigger ideas. But, so the idea is hey, why can't you introduce these ideas earlier?
Yeah.
And why can't you do that through a different medium?
No, I think this is a wonderful concept. Again, going back to just, pre 9/11 days, we had no idea who Al-Qaeda was.
Right.
We knew that there were obviously some people who are upset with the United States, but we're the big dog, so of course there's going to be haterade, served at the parties.
Right.
And that was pretty much the extent of and now granted, I try to keep up to date, but this was before, 24-hour news was just sort of becoming the in vogue thing. CNN hadn't really been around. I don't even think Fox News even really existed yet.
Yeah.
When I was a lieutenant, and so it was really we were only ingesting what was being fed, and things like international awareness, especially of impoverished countries, was not what you had to unless you're going to take out a MU, then you needed to know about the region.
And the 90s was a very confused strategic era also, right? It was the end of the Cold War, and we had this massive Cold War military, but no opponents. So what do we do? We start putting out fires, across the planet.
Sure.
The MUs were very important back then, and then there's a lot of drawdowns. But it was a confused sort of experience.
Yeah.
But you don't, when you're going through it in the 90s,
you didn't even really get to see you weren't really looking for much more than what was you were being told. You were happy with that level of information. So I remember when the USS Cole was bombed.
Oh, that's right.
It was just what a bunch of dickheads,
Yeah.
But that was it. That was the extent of it. Hey, well, let's find them and we'll, rough them up and then put them in jail or whatever. It wasn't there wasn't the spider web of, holy geez, there's an entire network of people that want to see America fall.
Right. And you think about it now, trying to speak academically or theoretically about it, the Navy, that was a crushing moment for the Navy. They had a massive warship, and it was basically non-functional because of a couple of terrorists on a boat, on a small boat that they had no idea.
Yeah.
So that made the Navy reevaluate itself. It's what do we spent a lot of money on it, and then they just lost a lot based off of a very low tech type adversary there. That they didn't expect in the first place.
Yeah, and you just thought well, it was I sort of think of it as almost seeing cockroaches or whatever, right?
Right.
Oh, I just need to kill this one. Here's a
right.
cockroach, kill him. Okay, we're done. That's pest control.
Right.
And then you pull back the drywall. You're like, holy shit! There's a ton of bugs here.
And they're carrying explosives.
Yeah, and no one told me, and I was not curious enough to even think to look.
Right.
We're in a very different world now, and I think this is where Destination Unknown is a wonderful vehicle, because it's like you said, we're in this, it gives the Marines, it gives the service members not just an opportunity to tease their curiosity, but to now engage.
Right. And they can join the fight. We're constantly looking for authors and writers to do it. And, if you look at the quality of stories, these aren't like New York Times or Pulitzer or any things. I write for it as well. But it shows these people reading it, hopefully, that, I can write something like this. I have an idea.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can bring those stories in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to definitely encourage anyone who's interested in this, or just for our listeners, like, there isn't a prerequisite that you have like the crystal ball, and that you're going to nail it every time that you make, that you propose a theory or you engage with innovation and future systems, future conflicts. But just the fact that you're even in the game is significant.
Right.
Yeah, sure, it's easy to sit up in the cheap seats and go, that would never happen. But you're in the cheap seats.
Right.
Like, if you, then give us your opinion. Do you have an opinion? Put it on paper, man.
Right.
And I think this is one of the great ways, one of the themes that we try to tease out in this podcast is this idea of art and how art reflects life, life reflects art. But I think from a military standpoint, it's more rich than just sort of telling a cool story. It's trying to almost like step into the wardrobe,
Right.
and enter Narnia for just a little bit of time.
Right. And, I talked about it in somewhere else before, but like the military's been sort of exploiting comics for like since World War II, even before that for propaganda. Look at Captain America.
Captain America, yeah.
The first issue of Captain America is him punching Hitler in the face.
Yeah.
That's the cover of Captain America. But when we were creating this idea, we thought back, it's like these were all done by professionals, right? This was like Marvel. These were actual Jack Kirby, these were actual professional artists and writers. And we're like, well, we got to have our own, how do we separate from that? So, it wasn't obvious at first, but it's like, hey, this needs to be our home brew. This is craft beer, right? That we're doing in our Foot Locker and our right? These are that we're doing in the barracks, right? So this is like a homegrown sort of look on how to do it. So it's all officer enlisted, active, and reserves that are the content creators. We have a lot of support elsewhere, but that was an important thing. I think we sort of found our rhythm, but like, hey, it's by the warfighter for the warfighter, and that's sort of our mantra.
And so speaking of that, those early comics were just guys who were geeking out. They didn't really have military background, but they could draw, they could tell cool stories.
Right.
How have you guys been received coming into that world? Because that dynamic hasn't changed among comic book creators, right?
Right. I guess so we get support from LtCol, who's a sci-fi writer, and then also Mark Sable, who is a actual comic writer, and he illustrates on the side. And they've been very receptive, in terms of coming into the space. And I know you're a creative writer yourself, and but there's you tweak that creative writing and the style to fit a comic. There's a certain cadence. And
writing a novel is not the same as writing a graphic novel.
Right,
Yeah.
but you can do it, and we can all do it. And I'm sure maybe you made comics when you were a kid, your own comics.
For sure.
It's a lot of the same ideas, but whittling it down and getting down to it. I guess it's just the writing process. Like, what are you really trying to say? And it's painful. But,
Yeah. But I guess what I'm thinking is like, so you're almost like a subgenre within a subgenre.
Right.
So has the comic book world embraced this?
I don't know.
Oh,
To be honest, I have no idea. But
well, it sounds like you're at least gaining some momentum by having
right.
novelists and comic book people participating.
Right. So I guess since our audience is other warfighters and people in this sort of business, I think they've received it. And in general, the government's always embraced it. They just don't. They're always in like little weird pockets. Like the Navy, they have a real interesting comic called The Docks. And this came out in the 2000s, maybe the late 2000s, around the time of PTSD, understanding that, and it's a story of corpsmen going through, the pre-deployment.
So DOCs, not DOCKs.
Right, DOCs, right. It's about corpsmen, in the pre-deployment cycle, going through like the trauma of war, and then or helping Marines through it, and then coming back, and they made a comic like that. And I don't know, it was never really advertised well. I only found it because I was digging, trying to find, what does the military do right now? If we're gonna enter this game, what's everyone else doing? And that was one of the ones I found. The Army comes out with some real elaborate stuff, but they're all like high class, serious professionals. It looks like any comic you'd find in the store.
Yeah, because they're paying for it.
Right, they're definitely paying for it. So so it's always been in our system, but it doesn't really come out. So we figured, when I came up with this idea, I was still, I think I was a command and staff student, or maybe a year out of it, but I was still affiliated with the school, being with the PhD program. So I was like, hey, why don't we do something and jam it into the PME system, or try our best to do it since we're already here, and that's how we differentiate ourselves.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. So yeah, I do actually. I hate to backpedal a little bit here, but you mentioned the PhD program. Before we get too much more into Destination Unknown, can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's a fascinating thing.
Right. So the PhD system. Okay. I'm trying to even think where it again. I guess the idea is that there's a PhD strategist program, which is what I'm in, and then there's a PhD like technologist, and the idea is that I guess we're always trying to figure out how to do war better and make it more efficient. And other services have been doing that. The Army is who we really model ourselves on. Is that if you have these really high-level thinkers, can we help the services and the COCOMs organize for war better? And hence the idea of strategy behind it. So the Marine Corps, the Army is probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 years into the system, and we're in our third year right now, trying to emulate the Army's PhD program. And the idea is that you create these PhD strategists, and they're put into select, quote unquote, strategic locations within the defense apparatus, and they help steer strategy better. But strategy is a funny concept. The more I'm like thinking about, this pretentious title and program I'm in, but how do I really fit into this? Well, who does strategy? And it's like, well, like 1/3 of the Pentagon, half of the Pentagon does strategy. A lot of the services do strategy. The COCOMs do it. So you find out, strategy is this really democratic process. And, as a strategist, the Marine Corps hopes to put us at these critical, times and places and moments and offices, so that when the strategy game is on and you're trying to craft something for war, you're there to kind of, put your hands in the right places to steer it a certain way. That's a real high level view of it, but that's what it is.
It's like when the coach comes out and calls on the right-hander.
Right.
Like.
Right. Maybe something like that. Exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is that there's a lot of people in the strategy game, so we're not really sure how it will benefit the service. The Marine Corps is trying to figure out, creating like internal think tanks and stuff like that. But it's a bit of a science experiment, and I'm okay. I'm very privileged and thankful for being a part of it.
That's really cool. I think that I think kind of like what we're talking about almost with Destination Unknown. It's like, well, you're participating,
right?
Like maybe we don't have a necessarily very clear end state as of yet, but we're in the game.
Right.
And it might be some discovery learning here, but we're going to be better at the end of it. Even if the whole thing goes, totally pear-shaped.
Right.
We're still going to be better at the end of it have we not even tried at all.
Right. And there's like a deeper, within the culture of, I like talking about military culture, within the culture of the DoD and the Marine Corps, we do put a lot of stake in, like, hey, we, the commander or the corporal on the ground or the lieutenant, we think these people matter, and if they can educate them and get them position well, they're going to make a difference. And I think PhD is sort of part of that spirit,
That's cool. Yeah, ideally. And so how did you get turned on to this? Because
the comic book or the program?
The program. Because until we talked, I was not even aware it existed.
It was sort of a new thing, and I was in Okinawa when the first Memoir admin came out. I didn't even know about it. And I guess there are some academics in my family who have PhDs also. I was like, they can do it, I can do it. And I just applied just to see what happened. I actually got rejected the first time, but I was on alternate. I applied the second time, and I think some of the selection committee may have remembered me or whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I got selected the second time around.
Okay.
Right.
So just do the Memoir admin.
Right, but I really had no idea.
Yeah.
And, it's still a funny thing thinking, do we really need PhD strategic thinkers? Why not just hire a guy off the street, right? Yeah, you could hire some guy out of Harvard or Yale right now.
Yeah.
But
there's find an LtCol, right? And just
right,
pay
exactly.
him a ton of money.
But there's this sort of homegrown aspect I think we're seeing. You want this practitioner / academic with the practitioner side up front, and that if you can broaden the view for the service, you can bring that in and hopefully make that strategy better when the time counts.
Yeah, nice.
That's a deeper idea, I think.
And then, and so American University is where you're at
Yeah.
in DC.
Mhm.
Was there? Is that the only school participating in this?
That was one of the schools that we were sort of told to go to.
Mm.
But they had a prior relationship probably through Dr. Ben Jensen over at Marine Corps University.
Okay.
So they were part of the initial experiment, and myself and another major at the time, now Lieutenant Colonel Ian Campbell, me and him, we both went to the school, and it's been a fantastic experience. But
Yeah.
we're glad it was a great choice, and we're very happy with it.
Go Eagles! Yeah,
Yeah.
I was on the other side of the quad for
That's
you,
right.
but I had a great time there as well.
That's right.
All right, so getting back to Destination Unknown, I find an interesting thing, and we'd had a previous interview where we talked a little bit about this. It was, but if you go to Barnes and Noble, if you go to Borders, and to a certain extent, if you go to your local comic book store, you're going to see a very specific kind of narrative. When it comes to the military, I think you're going to find the Medal of Honor winner that's on the shelf, and then you're going to find the general of the task force, And so you're not getting necessarily as much of I don't know what's the term, but a wide of a selection. You're getting a very specific narrative, and so I think that sort of informs the public. But then I think it also affects the individual Marine. Like, where's my story in all of this? Like, do I have to be a Medal of Honor winner to matter, or do I have to be the CG of RCT 5 to be seen in this thing? I don't know. What are some of your thoughts there?
Right. There's definitely a perspective on what sells and what's interesting, right? The high level commander, or like the commando, the Captain Americas of that.
Right.
So
The
there's
guy who
definitely
killed Bin Laden.
right.
Yeah.
It's like there are some major, usually male heroes, right, that are represented there. I guess through this, hopefully, if we're looking from the bottom up, that we do want to show different perspectives on the on warfare that you might not get if you're looking from the top down. But if you look at the same problem or the same issue from the bottom up, you might get a different look. I think I try to tell that in my story. It was called Second Chance with Aria, about the AI and recruiting, and it just showed some girl who didn't get selected because the AI system said she wasn't good enough. So I wasn't trying to tell like a deep story about this AI algorithm that figured out all this stuff. It was just a story about this is what can happen. You might miss a lot of good people if you don't get it, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I guess the point of these stories is that if we can tell it from the bottom up and tell it from these different angles, the answer that you tell is less important than the questions that come up after it.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
how you
really
think
good.
about it. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, the idea that it's the question that matters, not necessarily always having the answer.
Right.
Yeah, and I think too, like just engaging with the text and finding your voice in the crowd of voices.
Right.
I think that matters, right? Like I participated here. Like I mattered
Sure.
in this massive, big blue arrow thing.
Right. And I think this is why we like the whole art aspect of it, because people will just pick it up just to look at the art, even if they read the story, and there's a certain level of attraction. Talking to Ian Brown over at the Krulak Center, they shut on a lot of DVs in and out, a lot of foreign militaries, and they always grab the Destination Unknowns. Whether they read it, and I don't know whether that influences their decisions in life at all, but they're interested in it just for the pictures.
Yeah.
At least initially, and they'll read through whatever they read through.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain appeal there, just with having some artistry involved.
I think that's and like we talked about a little bit, like there's a difference between a novel, a memoir, and then a graphic novel.
Sure.
There's so much nuance that goes into making these pages, other than just
Right.
having readable words and cool looking pictures.
Right.
And so I think like when we start to think like where people can start to see themselves. So there's lots of different types of military writing styles, right? You have your after action reports, you have your point papers, op orders. And when you get out, you can write a memoir or whatever. But I feel like what you guys are doing here is not just like, hey, I'm going to take my experiences, but then I'm going to project it forward,
Right.
and then imagine a world of the unknown,
Right.
right?
Right. And this is done at little, this is definitely done on a lower level, but part of the business of war, when we're not fighting war, is imagining war. It's really the same thing. When the Pentagon forecasts 10 years out, 15 years out, they have to imagine war. Granted, they use like real intelligence and different things like that, but this is sort of the same trope. But so we extend past that, by decades, because we want to look at, we try to pull out the real social, deeper level problems. We're not trying to figure out technologies, and we're not trying to solve immediate problems, but I guess that's what the graphic novel is for. It's a way of imagining war, and that's what that's part of the fun of it. So we give a lot of leeway to our artists and writers on what they want to write about.
That's so cool.
Yep.
And so then how does that work as far as if someone did have like, hey, I got a cool idea that I want to, do they submit a sort of a treatment to you, or they just send you guys an email or something, say, hey, like I got this cool story, or
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, hey, I have an idea, or they may have an idea, and we help them shape it a little bit if they want the help. But what's funny about the first issue is that we had writing prompts. We didn't really know. The initial dream was to put out one writing prompt, put it out by Moradman, and get a bunch of stories. This is how our wonky thinking back then. It's like, oh, we'll put it out there.
Yeah.
We'll let people send their stories and illustrations, and we'll slap it all together and make a comic book.
Yeah.
But that was one of our original ideas. So by the time we decided to do it, more centralized and everything like that, we did give each writer a writing prompt. And it's like, hey, write around this idea, write around this idea. But for our second and now working on our third issue, we're just write whatever you want to write about. And, and we put them far out, like, hey, 2075, because we don't want them to get caught up in, like, all the discussions going on now. We want to send them out into the destination unknown.
Nice.
Right? Like that.
Oh, cool. And we'll make sure that we get the links and stuff
Okay, great.
in the show notes and podcast notes so that people know where to go to participate in this. And I highly encourage anybody to do that. One of the things, too, I think about storytelling, this idea of sharing ideas. And what I'd like for you to maybe talk about is how leadership can share in this. And my thought is that what you could maybe talk a little bit about the value of, say, a task force commander or a battalion commander picking this thing up and maybe not necessarily seeing one of their Marines in here, but just seeing what Marines are thinking about.
Right. So at the end of each story here, we have a set of questions. And so each story does sort of have like some type of narrative or some type of lesson or whatever it is that they're trying to tell. And there are sort of set of questions that go along with it. If I were a commander and I wanted to open up like dialogue with my wardroom and my officers with my enlisted, they can use this as a tool, not to like teach the story itself, but to just open a dialogue with their soldiers and sailors or whatever it is, So this can just sort of be like a, not a tool to learn per se, but a tool to engage your people. So part of what we are really proud about is that you opened up a story before. It's called The Matter of Instinct. It was written by Major Tim Riemann and Corporal Gerard Moore from Kayak. And that's one of my favorite stories because it had an interaction between the officer and enlisted. They worked together. They got together. They shaped the story together, and they worked as a team to create the product. And that's something that we've always been really proud of because this is what we wanted, is that you get this sort of interaction between people that would never interact with each other, but they did for that story. So you talk about how commanders can use this as a tool. You don't have to use it as a tool to teach the actual idea of the story. You can use it as the way to open up engagement with your troops, and that's how I would use it. If you're the way you asked that question.
For sure, yeah. No, that's there's so many ways I think that this helps us envision the future, and then also not just for the individual storytellers to engage, but then for people who are reading to
right.
Have that sort of cyclical relationship, even if you never
Right.
do anything more than just read it. I think it invites you to participate,
Right.
which is like so cool.
And this could be a gateway for a bigger idea. Some 400-page book on the Common Arts reading list.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that. But you can do a 10-minute story here.
Well, and how often though, when you look back at things, you see that like, well, we're especially now in this era where science fiction and science fact is a very thin line, right?
Right.
And so if you get some like, these kids who are playing with the toys and envisioning what it would be like 30 years from now to have these same types of things,
Right.
or to hear about initiatives and then to envision what it would be like, I think there's a lot of value there, and who knows, somebody may actually nail it.
Right, and this is just we talk about this as part of the big PME game. That's what PME system, that's what the PME system tries to do. Also, they teach you where the stuff about history and warfare and
Yeah.
IR, and eventually one of those tools might come in very helpful for someone. We don't know who it's going to be, but it's we do it to hopefully have that individual ready for that moment. But then we also do it just to enrich ourselves because
Sure.
we think by doing that it makes the whole service better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about I'm brain farting right now, but iRobot, was that Bradbury Asimov? Was that Asimov? Yeah. So would you imagine that Asimov, when he was writing iRobot, was thinking about algorithms?
Right. He didn't
Probably
need to.
not. But where are we right now? Like, we're looking at AI and algorithms like, oh, dude, this thing's this is Skynet, man. We're about to go sentient.
Right. He had the 3 rules too, right?
Yeah.
Or the 4 rules or whatever it was. One like, hey, don't let machines do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so cool. In the first few pages here of in your letters from the editor, you mentioned a few types of PME and how they challenge minds and assumptions. While these are effective, clearly, because we continue to use them with great effect, you ask if there's other ways to stretch our creativity. Is that another one of like the seed beds or the impetuses behind this project? Is like, can we go beyond the model?
Yeah, I think that might have been like a romantic thing that we wrote in there. We were trying to, we were just like, oh, let's just write this in, but like, right. So if you look at the PME space and like how we do it, like I don't see any graphic novels in that system. We're like, oh yeah, that's where we sort of fit in, and whether it works or not, I mean, it's hard to really tell, you know, to measure the effectiveness of your comic book or the comics that we write, but it is a different way of looking at it, and it might not catch the normal EWS student, but it might catch some sergeant in sergeant's course, and get them in that way, and we don't really know, but it's something novel and different. So I guess that would be like the functional value of it. So when we were creating this, we also looked at sort of like the practical value, right? The sort of officer enlisted teaming, or just teaming with people you would never work with. Mm-hmm. And we also looked at it as a way to network between and have individuals meet. And there's the individual aspect of just, becoming a better writer or becoming an artist. Some of our artists, they use their illustrations and they put it part of their portfolios, because they're trying to, market themselves in different ways. So it's actually very beneficial for some of the people doing that also. So.
Yeah. And who knows who this might light a fire under someone,
right?
To be the next LtCol or something, right?
Right. But I know it's a couple of artists, but there's something they're proud of also. And I'm glad that at least we had this vehicle for them to kind of expand themselves in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've put my foot into the trying to craft a graphic novel, and after about 3 pages, I'm like, this is hard.
Oh, hey, you can do it. I believe you.
Even with stick figures and stuff.
I've seen your writing. It's good. You can do it. It's just sort of the artistry is the hardest part of the whole process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So could we talk just a little of the logistics then? Like, what were some of the stuff that you How hard was this to get off the ground?
It was hard, and it's still hard. Probably because most of the editorial team, which is our ops staff, this is all our side jobs. So it's whatever we can do, in the evenings, on the weekends, and a lot of emails don't get answered for a while, and but what really launched it was that I asked General Bowers, who was the MCU president at the time, about this idea. And I pitched it to him over in My Deli, right across the street from here. He came in for lunch.
Nice.
And then I knew him because of the PhD program, and he actually sat with me. He's like, "Oh, you just started talking about the PhD program," and I had this sort of sketchbook and ideas, like, "Hey, sir, by the way, what do you think of this comic?" As I'm, trying to eat my Philly cheesesteak sandwich, and he looked at it. He was like, "Oh, that's interesting," but and this is when I tried to tell him about this more admin idea about
yeah.
bringing in all these. He's like, "Oh, no, you can't do that." But what he said was like, "Oh, you got to make a prototype and let me see what it looks like, and we'll go from there." But consider me, I'm a supporter, and go use our services and let them know that I'd support you guys. And that's all I needed. Like, oh man, that top down, sort of that top cover, and that's when Krulak Center was like, okay, the General's on board, we're on board. And then MCU Press is like, okay, we're on board too. So now I get to engage with the resources there because the General was interested.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Philly cheesesteaks, man.
My
That's
Philly
what makes the world go around.
Me being a nasty body eating a cheesesteak with my little notebook, but I happen to have like my printouts and some ideas, and I don't even know why I was there. I think I was trying to pitch the Krulak Center on this.
Okay.
But this was the push we needed, and that helped. That helped sort of formalize the program, and it was easier to get people to support. It's like, hey, we're like an MCU program, and we're trying to do this. Do you want to be a part of it? It's like, okay, instead of just a couple of majors sitting around. Right.
Yeah. Hey, we're gonna make a comic book.
Right. It's like a.
yeah.
And we still get that look sometimes. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. So you'd say like probably until you got that top cover, it's kind of like the audible back molar suck when you're mentioning like.
It was like we didn't know how to really like where do you begin, like how do you, but it was just sort of that one moment, and it was part of that PhD program. I had a relationship with him through that, and he knew me already, and I felt comfortable pitching with them right there on the spot. It's like, hey, fortune favors the brave. They taught us on TBS.
Totally. Have your elevator speech, man. Have
Right.
your elevator speech. Yeah.
Right, I had it next to my nasty sandwich, and I did it.
Yeah, that's great.
Right.
That's such a good story, and I find that so encouraging because there's so many times where you're passionate about something and you just hit obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, and you're just like, you know what, F it, man. This is just not
Right.
gonna happen. But yeah, keep with it, right? You never know. Philly
Right.
cheesesteak sandwich in a general.
You never know, my
And
belly,
yeah.
my deli, where dreams can happen. It can turn.
It's called the Crossroads of the Marine Corps for a reason, right? So what was it like then going from concept to print? Like you said, so MCU Press was involved now. So then was it just like we just got this momentum, we're just rolling, or you're like,
Right.
ideas are getting ahead of the practice? Sort of
Exactly that. So we were
Okay.
like, all right. So we just start looking for authors, and we're just looking for artists, and we're like, oh, let's get it together. They were like, oh, what do we actually tell them? Like, how do you? Because I have some art and architecture background, but it's like in terms of like designing a comic, I was like, I really don't have any real professional instinct on how to do this, and you bump up to the Truman Wall very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what am I doing here? So we started looking for help. And so I look online looking for. So initially we thought we needed artists, like professional artists. So I was going to pitch Marine Corps University Foundation for money to go hire artists, and we didn't. And we couldn't get that much money, and it was actually a very difficult thing to do. So at one point, one of the other editors, her name is Major Sarah Wood, who worked at McKayak. She's like, hey, we need to do this in-house. Let's get these people at McKayak. Let's get these people at the ComCam centers or defense media, the defense media agencies and stuff like that. Let's do this all in-house because it was a money issue. At first, it was like, this is really difficult to coordinate. So like, okay, let's do that. But we still needed some support. So I found this guy named Gabriel Pons, who owns a comic shop in Fredericksburg. And I just reached out to him out of the blue, and I think via Twitter or Facebook. I think it was via Twitter. I was like, "Hey, we're trying to do this. Would you be interested in helping us out?" And he was like, "Yeah." He's very easy to work with, and he's still one of our artist mentors. If you see him on our table of contents up front, we credit him as our mentor. But then the actual comic itself, we reached out. I think we reached out to LtCol first because we didn't know. I mean, we just had a relationship with him for other things.
Atlantic Council, yeah.
Right, and he does stuff for the Marine Corps and the Air Force. But he was busy, so he directed us to his friend, Mark Sable. And Mark Sable is an actual comic writer, and I reached out to him via Twitter again, I think after August, he must have prepped the battlefield for us. Mark was like, okay, let's do it. So he's been very helpful, between Mark, August, and Gabe. We had some professional guidance on like, hey, you should make it look like this. Make sure your stories look like this. Framing. We've had each of them, the August Mark's pair, and also Gabe. That at the front of every comic, they've given mentorship advice, and they interact with our writers, and they actually trained us on how to at least work it together. And then there's also the University Press, who we figure out the press guidelines and what they want and everything like that. So there's a big family of people putting this thing together. But because of us, it was just an idea for us, but we needed a lot of help, and we got it through. But I think it all started really by having that top cover from General Bowers.
Yeah,
right.
Takes a village, right?
Right, takes definitely a lot of village.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, for nothing other than getting that direct mentorship is worth participating in.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that's. I mean, you can't. People pay a lot of money for a seminar or a workshop with these folks.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. So where do you see it going? I know you mentioned you're on your third episode or your third issue.
Right.
Are you guys going to? Yeah. Where do you see it going?
Right. So, I mean, right now, I wish we could say we're like organizationally much better we were than our first issue, but we're not. I mean, I guess it's every issue has its own set of problems. Our editors change, and then the writers and authors who are around the planet also come from different places. So we haven't found a way to truly like operationalize it like a business, because we're this is a side job for us, but the first thing we're going to do, we're actually writing down. We did a lessons learned thing, with the help of the Krulak Center. We're writing down some SOPs. We're going to create like a memorandum of agreement with MCU Press. So there's like this boring procedural stuff we need to do with the people who support us to codify it.
Yeah.
And the idea is like once you do that, we can pass it on to the next generation people who have the time and energy to do it. And then in terms of the real operational impact, we want to actually pitch it to the people who actually run the PME schools, who holds like the curriculums, and see if we can insert it into the actual like at the end of each curriculum. There's usually a thing about the future of warfare, or maybe in the middle, and we want to get it in there. Right now, some instructors have done that on their own, but I don't know if we can actually codify it. That's like a big dream. The other big dream would be to actually link the stories we write to like a sponsoring office in the Marine Corps that actually cares about that story. If whoever it is, if the CNO really cares about this thing, and his CNO strategy team's like, hey, would you write us a story on this? We want to do that. Have a customer and actually link it to the operational focus of the service. It doesn't have to be immediate, but I know. 30 years they're interested in sort of this Arctic. If you believe in the climate change and those Arctic channels opening up, that's an issue for the Navy. And they said, hey, would you do a couple of stories for us with these ideas? Like, we want to do that. So it's to build this sort of operational links, soft links, because we don't want them to like dictate what the artists do.
Right.
But that would be the way to professionalize it. So we're trying to professionalize it. So right now we're still pretty nascent. I think with working on our third issue. But to professionalize it procedurally, and then to link it into the business of the organization is where the big thing is. And we've talked, and on the side we've talked like, oh, we should reach out to Disney and make a movie. But those are sort of lofty things. But we want to focus on the business of why we doing it in the first place.
And so to that extent, so there was probably, I would imagine, some churn in the civilian sector that sees a market for this, but you guys are trying to keep it people in uniform, right?
Right, and I think that's like the one like thing we got to hold ourselves to. Otherwise, it could get diluted. Maybe not in a good way, bad way, but that part of the novelty of it is that it's by the warfighter for the warfighter. So we hold ourselves to it. Those are the ideas, because these professionals and things like that, they have plenty of platforms, but how many do we have? I don't know.
Right, and I think there's a little bit of a corrupting influence there too, because then it becomes about the business.
Right. And then go back to like, I like the rawness of it. Look at the Matter of Instinct. I don't know if you can tell, but some of them have like erasure lines.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but that's part of the homebrew that we're doing.
Yeah,
we like it.
It's like on like the backside of a MRE box or something, right?
Right.
You know,
It's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
In fact, that's a great idea. That should be like one of the pages. Look, something written on an MRE box. In fact, that's a great idea.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, man.
Yeah, we'll credit you
Drop
for
the
that.
microphone, maybe end it over there on a
The
high note.
MRE box pages. That's right.
And so I guess to get in a little more pricklier subject, so have you experienced any pushback or any criticism?
I have had, we definitely had some criticisms from academics who might not like the story or thought it was, that it was sort of like that subjective type stuff. But
Okay.
generally, I guess if there are negative remarks, people have kept them to themselves
Okay.
because, it's we try not to get too arrogant about this, but it's just it's a science experiment in itself.
Right.
It's sort of like a passion project, and it's not always great.
Yeah, I think that I think anybody who reads this and then is going to try to break it down, from a strategic standpoint, is probably missing the point.
Right.
That if you're going to try to read the chicken bones,
Right.
I want to know more about what thematically I should be worried about, not like where was the chicken raised and was it like
Right.
free range or not and vegetarian fed. Like, just let's get an idea here and let's have a dialogue like you mentioned earlier.
That's right. It's the questions that come up afterwards, not the like, oh, you can't have an astronaut cleaning windows and one of the there's a panel of an astronaut because that's field day. But that was just a story. No one's gonna. That's just we're just telling stories.
Yeah, it's just an image to show field day
Right.
in space.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Every Wednesday, right?
Yeah, man.
Every Wednesday at the barracks.
Yeah, it's a leadership opportunity.
That's right.
Yeah, for everybody who's ever been OOD on a field day night, that's gonna be a busy one.
Right.
So I guess what's next for you? So we're talking destination unknown. We're talking PhD program. Yeah, what's next?
So I guess I'll tell you about where I'm going next, and then a project that we're doing also with NCU.
Let's.
So I guess in terms of the least important, but they're going to send me to PPNO. There's a strategy office in there. I'm going to help the Marine Corps do strategy. A lot of policies and maybe help a group of people come up with some new ideas for the service. So that's the immediate job, and I check in at PPNO in a couple weeks.
Nice,
Yeah,
congrats.
looking forward to it. So in terms of actual educational projects, I've been working with MCU Krulak Center again on this thing called the Barrow Fellowship. I don't know if I ever mentioned that to you.
Yeah, we actually got the September issue is going to feature a couple articles from the Barrow Fellows.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Barrow Fellowship is myself and another couple majors and working with the Krulak Center. But the idea is to focus on high-level strategic issues, gather the students from different PME institutions and also from the OPFOR, which we did this last one, and we hold these fellowship type seminars. We did it all through Zoom last year because of the pandemic and COVID.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we fellows meet once a month, via Zoom or in person if we could do it, and you kind of go through, we bring guests and we bring some type of specialist to talk about an area of security interest. We do that over 6 or 7 months, and there's an output for these fellows is that that they have to produce a paper, and you guys are publishing some of them. They're actually pretty good in terms of the space ones and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah.
Right, and we modeled this fellowship program off of the DC fellowship programs you see at different think tanks. They do the same thing. They pull security, government professionals, and you meet once a month. They bring a lecturer, but they don't always make you write at the end. But there's usually food. There's a fellowship in terms of networking, and you move on with that year, and you're always part of that system. And they send you emails and stuff like that, and you can network that way. So we're we thought about this 2 years ago when we first created it. We're like, why can't we do the same thing? And that's where the idea of the Barrow Fellowship. So the Barrow Fellowship is General Barrow. He was our commandant in the early 80s, I think maybe late 70s. I think I'm going to get this wrong, but
We'll edit in the right date.
Yeah, I think but it was General Barrow, and he was one of our Cold War commandants. Like, he had experience in China as a China Marine, Korea. He fought in Vietnam. Like, he did all of it. Mm-hmm. So he was when we created the fellowship, it was this idea of great power competition and everything like that. So he was our commandant, great power competitor. We're like, so we named it after him. But that was the idea. So the first year we focused on sort of competition with China, since that was the big buzz, and it still is in some ways. The second year we focused it on sort of space and security. The creation of the Space Force was married up to that
Sure.
year. And this year, with the DoD actually is saying that climate is a national security interest. We're going to focus on the climate and environment and see what are the issues, because I'm actually pretty ignorant of it, but we get some
Yeah.
professionals that talk about these different segments of what that means for security, with a bunch of fellas. We meet once a month, and then there's an output paper at the end, and hopefully you'll get some more material for the Gazette.
Yeah, I can't
in
wait.
about a year from now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I think that's so. I think there's a lot of goodness, and again, it's just, hey, are we going to engage in dialogue over
Right.
these things? We're not necessarily looking for answers. Answers would be great,
Right.
especially as we're talking about national security, but just the journey's in the path. To quote the Buddha, like
There, yeah.
we're not going to get there if we don't start taking these steps.
That's right. And you force people to think and mix together, and hopefully good things happen.
Yeah.
That's someone else's PME formula. We're just adding our own thing to it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. For sure. And I think there's value there, and not just being on the receiving end of other people's good ideas,
Right.
but to throw our hat into the fray, sort of thing.
Right. I guess it also helps that the Barrel Fellowship is that, like, this is part of the, we could say this is part of the Marine Corps strategy program. And then when I go to PPNO, hopefully you might be able to build a link between the fellowship and, the business of the service,
Yeah.
because I know, if we're still, if we're still an amphibious warfighting organization, I think we care about, if there's going to be more water or not.
Yeah, that's going to be important,
Right.
especially if not a lot of it is drinkable.
Right. Think of a knuckle drag. I was like, oh yeah, do we need more? If there's going to be more water, there are more places to get in,
Yeah.
and people fighting over water.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned our business, because at a very overly simplistic level, yeah, our business is warfighting.
Sure.
But our business, to be a good warfighter, is to be a thinker
Right.
and to start to project out. Because I can't continue to fight yesterday's wars,
That's right.
because then I'll continue to lose tomorrow's wars.
Right. And Victor Krulak, actually no, Chuck Krulak, our former commandant, he has a great quote that the Krulak Center uses all the time. But it's the we train for things we know, and we educate for the things we don't know.
Mhm.
And, hopefully we're part of that latter part.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, we're coming to the end of our time here, man. This has been really great.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. But one of the things I want to ask you, so we end on a high note, is what was your best day in the Marine Corps?
Oh man, that's Dan. So there was a day. There were. I'll be selfish. There was a neat day when I was in Iraq in 2007, and I went on a convoy I was with the 7th ESB, and I went on one of our first convoys with I needed to see how our radio operators worked, in terms of supporting the convoys, and I also needed to see how they managed our ECM systems, our counter RCIED. And seeing that stuff. But it was a long convoy. I'm not sure remember where it was, but we crossed the Euphrates, and during that day, so it was seeing our radio operators, our homegrown radio operators that were not radio operators, they were engineers that we had to pull from different parts of the unit. So we homegrown them, seeing them in action in terms of managing the convoy, doing that mission, and then we crossed the Euphrates. That was pretty neat. We crossed back, and then that day I went to some training in. I think in Camp Taiji north of Baghdad, and you went on an Osprey ride. So that happened in like a 12-hour span.
Hey, nice.
That was a lot of it was like sensory overload.
Yeah.
Seeing the Marines thing, crossing the Euphrates, kind of being a military tourist, which is what we are sometimes when we're out there, and then flying an Osprey, going to learn about counterinsurgency and meeting these like Iraqi generals talk about how to fight out in Iraq. I was like, holy shit, this all happened in a 12-hour period.
Yeah. You were a one-man MAGTAF.
Right, a one-man MAGTAF, that's right.
Awesome.
Yeah, unstoppable. First Lieutenant Yang, watch out.
In the fight.
Yeah, that was a pretty neat day.
Well, Major Yang, thank you so much for being here. This has been great, and we'd love to have you back. I know once you go up to the Pentagon, your time will no longer be yours, but if you get some free time, and especially as some of these future initiatives start to bear fruit, we'd We'd love to have you back, man. Talk about it.
Absolutely, thanks. And this is great, and I hope hopefully your listeners like it. But this is a great format, and I'm looking forward to see what you guys produce.
Sweet, us too.
Yeah.
But hey, Destination Unknown for everybody out there, come check it out. They're on their third volume, or third episode, or third issue of the first volume. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
There are volumes. I don't know. We just call them volumes right now.
There's 3 of them out there, man. So check them out. These things are great. And if you got some thoughts about the future, contribute, please.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Bye.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. I am Nick Wilson. That is Major Vic Ruble, U.S. Marine Corps retired. You have also heard the voices of or contributions from William Treuting or Nancy Lichtman, editors of Gazette and Leatherneck magazines, respectively. Opinions expressed in Scuttlebutt are just that, opinions, and do not represent any official stance of the MCA.